Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds.
Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
Hello and welcome to Islanders Anxiety from Lighthouse Hockey and the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Dan Saracini. Joining me on this Sunday afternoon via Zencaster is my friend Michael Leboff. And Mike, the Islanders did it. They have won 3 whole games in a row. It took until mid-January to do it, but it was kind of worth the wait. They did it in pretty impressive fashion, coming off of the overtime win in Boston. They walked into Vegas and walked out with a shutout, which is very unusual. And you know, the Golden Knights are the best team in the NHL right now, and the Islanders just really toyed with them for 60 minutes and came out with a very impressive win. And then they sort of had a different kind of impressive win on Saturday in Utah by fighting against a goalie who was basically poised to steal the game and coming away with a 2-1 win. I'll ask you this question, then we'll start there with the game. Of the 2 wins, the 3-0 shutout in Vegas or the 2-1 win in Utah, what would you say was your favorite of the 2 of them? Like, which one did you kind of enjoy watching the most?
Oh, that's funny because I guess during the game it was obviously Vegas, but afterwards the Utah one felt a lot more satisfactory because if you've been an Islander fan long enough, there are some games where you can tell by the first shift of a game, you know exactly how it's going, and you even predict it. You're like, oh, Connor Ingram 50 goal,
Right.
50 save shutout in a 1-0 win for Utah. I had a similar thought within the first 30 seconds of that game. Islanders had a good start. They were seemingly buzzing, building off of what they did in Vegas. Ingram had made a couple of good saves early, and it just felt like one of those games, which is, and the saying "one of those games" is that it has become a cliche because it's supposed to be one of those games, which tells you it's a rarity. One of many games sometimes goes this way, but for the Islanders, it's not one of those games. It's many of those games.
Exactly.
It's going to be a many of those games where, like it happened in Dallas, the overtime loss of St. Louis, the Alex Lyon trilogy against the Red Wings, where the Lucas Dostal game against the Ducks this season, the game against the Blue Jackets right before that when they got shut out too. And it was just evident that the Islanders, there was like a force field around the opposition's net, and the Islanders were not going to score enough. It happened against the Canadiens too in that overtime loss. Like it was just one of those many games for the Islanders up until Brock Nelson, Anders Lee, and Matt Barzal, and I guess Noah Dobson was involved in that first goal too, unlocked the wormhole and allowed the Islanders to win one of those games for once. So I was so sure that game was going to end 1-0 Utah or 2-1 Utah, whatever, in regulation, that after the Adam Pelech made that crazy save behind the big hog, that even that I was just like, I kind of got mad. I was like, at least if that had won in, I could turn off this game in peace and go to bed and not feel too worried about it. But Yeah, then the Islanders did something unexpected, um, which was they won one of those games. They came back, they scored, they stuck with it. They played a really good finish to the game until the last 85 seconds. But yeah, so that's why I think the Utah game was the more fulfilling one afterwards, because it was one of those games until it wasn't, and it's been a really long time since the Islanders have played one of those games until it wasn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm for the first time all season we have a week's worth of games to look back on, and we don't have to either just be despondent or be like, yeah, they did win, but they also lost to, and whatever. We get a unbridled optimistic episode here. I'm sure we'll certainly sprinkle the pessimism, as this team is still a game under NHL 500, 42 games into the season, but
right, with
it
half
does
the
feel
Eastern
good.
Conference between them and the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I guess I enjoyed that. It was honestly the first time this season where the last 5 minutes, excuse me, the first 5 minutes after a game ended, which after a satisfactory win, they're bliss, right? You don't have to worry about the game anymore. You feel relief and joy and whatever. Those were the best post game 5 minutes of the season, I think, to date.
Yeah, no, I agree. And actually, it's funny. I thought you were going to go with Vegas, but you kind of took the words right out of my mouth, and also added some new elements as well. It did feel like one of those games for sure. Like, it looked like Connor Ingram was just going to straight up steal that game, but they just kept at it. And yeah, the second period was their sloppiest, I would say, but the third period they were really terrific, and they really poured it on. And the first period they were the better team by far. Ingram was the only reason it was scoreless, but when it was over, I felt like not only was it, the first in a long time of games where they ended up turning it around and making it went from being one of those games to a solid win. It just, I don't remember the last time, certainly wasn't this season. I'm sure there were a few last season, but like, it felt like they really worked to come take that game and win it. Like, it wasn't that they just kind of came out strong like they did in Vegas and stay strong the entire game. It wasn't like one of those games where they just kind of like found a way to win by accident, which happens occasionally as well, or Ilya Sorokin stands on his head and they end up winning that way. This was a game in which they had to work really hard to get back into it, and they did, and then they sealed it with, like you said, 90 seconds of sort of chaos, but it felt like kind of vintage Islanders chaos a little bit. There were a lot of saves. Marcus Hogberg was fantastic. The big hog. We'll talk about him, I guess, a little bit more in a minute when we talk about Ilya Sorokin. But, there were a bunch of blocks in there too, and everybody was sort of pulling on the rope the same way. And yeah, I mean, satisfying is definitely the best way to put it. Like, that to me felt like a very vintage Islanders performance. Obviously, yeah, okay, the score was 2-1. But even still, besides the score, I just found a sense of pride in that game, that they really kind of played the way that I think they want to play and just haven't for the most part. And somebody, I think it was our friend Corey Wright, asked Patrick Waugh at the end about, sort of playing with confidence now that they've won 3 games in a row, and what a game like this might mean. And Waugh said, I think that playing a game like this will give them more confidence because they didn't blow it. They stuck with it in the last couple of seconds. And obviously Utah was going to tie it. They had a couple of pretty good looks, but with teamwork and good defense, the Islanders managed to walk out with a win. And that's what you got to do in the NHL. And the Islanders used to do that all the time, and they haven't in a very long time. So yeah, satisfying is a great way to put the Utah game. As a side note, just to mention it, I'm sure that it was a deliberate choice on MSG's part to keep mentioning the fact that there's a whole bunch of obstructed seats at the Delta Center that are now all of a sudden super cheap, and you can only see, whatever 2/3 of the ice, something like that. Also very, very satisfying for those of us that lived through the Barclays Center era to be like, okay, like, listen, we've been through this. We know what it's like. Everybody made fun of the Islanders, but now nobody's making fun of Utah for this. But it's pretty obvious that, the MSG crew gets it. And they were like, these. So just an extra layer on top of an already satisfying win.
Yeah, there was a couple of things that the MSG crew noted during the game that I was like, oh man, maybe they're listening. One was when they were talking about Max Siplikov. He made a really nice move at one point in the game, and they were talking about how his first NHL goal came
Right.
in that game against Utah, and Thomas Hickey was like, "Yeah, it turns out that game was like a harbinger of things to come, huh? Like it's just it's a game that it was the first game of the season, and we allude to it all the time because it really did matter in terms of setting the tone." And as you said, the obstructed seats thing. Don't think that wasn't lost on a lot of Islander fans. That the business genius that is Ryan Smith. I've been in tough negotiations before. My father was a builder. Ryan Smith is a real shark, and the NHL is going to be a better league to have him in it. He opens finally 40 something games into the season, probably because maybe interest has waned a little bit, or Utah Hockey Club isn't the shiny new toy. Almost in a way that Amazon documentary, as soon as it released, and the entire media contingent that was like, "Oh, hockey fans are gonna love this. This is gonna be the next big thing," and then it got released, and there wasn't
Nobody
a peep
cared.
about it, and you haven't heard about it since. It's like the Utah Hockey Club as well, and then they do this little thing with and hey, whatever. It's a good idea. You give those obstructive view seats $10, get a hot dog or whatever, and but as you said, when the Islanders were trying stuff like this with those obstructed view seats, it was an absolute affront to the sport, an embarrassment, a clown franchise. But because it's a different ownership regime team, it's this is progressive thinking. These are the type of minds we need in this league to grow the game. Hockey is for everyone. Hockey is for except for Islander fans. Hockey is for everyone.
Right.
But yeah. So that did make it a little bit more satisfying. I maybe it says a lot about us as a fan base, but it seems that there's like these kind of cliched, if you don't like blank, then you're not a hockey fan, or how could you not like blank? And we're going to talk about one of these guys later in the show, actually. And
we are.
I don't want to give it away off the jump because it might catch you by surprise. But you're not, if you can't find a way to root for Sidney Crosby to get his to make the playoffs a couple more times before he hangs them up, what kind of fan are you? And I feel like every time that these narratives are brought up, Islander fans are the ones like, I despise that guy. He still haunts my nightmares. Could add Ryan Smith to that list of this is we should be rooted for this story in Utah. Nah, don't care for it one bit.
Right. We're going to talk about another team, not the one we're going to do the one you were mentioning too, but we're going to talk about another team that I felt was in a somewhat of an Islanders type situation, and I was rooting for them, and I got some pushback for it, and I'll talk about that later on too. But definitely, it feels like the Islanders walked into two sort of golden boy franchises and walked out with 2 wins that I think left people maybe shaking their heads or a little bit, kind of like confused, like what just happened here? Particularly in Vegas, where they don't lose very often. It even got mentioned on 32 Thoughts, the podcast, which you were just mentioning, that Lou Lamoriello came out. We'll talk about Lou's press conference towards the end of this first half too. And, said that basically the team is going to stay together. He's not thinking about trading anybody. And then they walk into Vegas and get a 3-0 win. Real quick, before we dive into all this, reminder that we are on Patreon at patreon.com/IslandersAnxiety. Membership gets you ad-free episodes, bonus podcasts, written posts, and a whole lot more. Or you can just join for free to get our weekly release calendar and any announcements. Sign up today, patreon.com/IslandersAnxiety. It is monthly mailbag week. So if you want to hear the mailbag episode or ask a question or both, make sure you sign up at patreon.com/IslandersAnxiety, because that's the only way to hear it. Okay, so real quick, just wrapping up the win in Utah. Nick Schmaltz got a tip in the second period. I'm still not 100% sure what happened, but it made it 1-0. And it looked like, again, that was all Connor Ingram was going to need, because he was really, really good. But the third period was kind of all Islanders. Brock Nelson scores the second game in a row, ties it. Beautiful feed from Anders Lee and Barzell. Basically, Nelson had an empty net, so that was a really nice play. And then Barzell, who was really flying all game, he's had a lot of jump. I mean, he must have read my thing over at the Patreon about how they haven't really come back and played all that well lately. He ties the game, scores the game-winning goal with 1:25 left. Kind of finds the puck, throw a bunch of chaos in front, and makes it 2-1. Got a bunch of saves from Marcus Hogberg, who was an emergency starter because Ilya Sorokin was sick. So we'll see what his status is like for Tuesday's game against Ottawa. But Hogberg was fantastic. He made 21 saves. There was, again, mostly in the second period where Utah really had a lot of chances, but he was the equal to Connor Ingram, if not with the same amount of volume. Again, Ingram for the last time almost stole the game. But the Islanders also significantly in this game, which can also help you get wins, is when you go 3 for 3 on the penalty kill. Go figure. Every single time they took a penalty, I'm like, well, this is it. This is where they lose this game. They're trying real hard, but this is where they go up 2-0.
You can almost see Anders Lee explain that to the ref. He's, as he was getting called for that goaltender interference, he's like, but you don't understand that if you put me in that penalty box, we're going to lose this game despite all the good work that we've done the past week. And the ref's like, well, you barreled over that goalie there, Anders. There's nothing I can do about that one. So you're gonna have to go sit and just hope and pray that your guys can get it done. And he's like, I don't think you understand. They can't get it done. They can't. But it worked.
I mean,
so.
I was watching the Islanders Rangers alumni game earlier on Saturday, and I was like, the Islanders alumni are killing penalties better than the current Islanders. And some of these guys are in their 50s and 60s, and they're putting a lot of effort in here. But no, credit to them. They went 3 for 3. Like that's got to be the first time they've gone 3 for 3 on the penalty.
It was the first time. I can't remember how many games he said, but Brendan was really trying to announcers jinx it. He's like, oh, the Islanders haven't had a game since whatever that they've killed off, had a perfect PK game with more than one penalty in it. Yeah. As the Islanders were like 47 seconds away from killing it, and I could feel Butchie staring it through Brendan's skull, because if you want to believe in the announcers jinx or not, I do a little bit, because especially with this crew,
right?
And this team, the Islanders are a team that the hockey gods are always looking for opportunities to punish. But the hockey gods were a little busy. I've been a little busy making sure the Rangers get back into the race, so they didn't have time to pay attention to the Islanders. So thankfully, because otherwise they would have heard Brendan say that, and the next thing you know, it would have been 2-1 Utah.
Right. Yeah. But so despite Brendan's hard work, the Islanders managed to kill out and do pretty well too. I don't even remember if Utah had a ton of chances even, but Hogberg was great. And that was it. And 2-1 win. I enjoyed it. I think, again, I get the jokes like, oh, the Islanders only win games 2-1. No, they haven't done that in quite a long time. And this one was as Trotzian and as classic Islanders as you can get. And I'm with you. I actually, it was funny. My wife is away. She's chaperoning a school trip to Hershey Park this week. So I could stay up till 1:00 on Saturday and not have to, go to work the next day or do anything really. And it was great to kind of see a jubilant coach, a happy coach, proud coach afterwards. It was really well done. And so, yeah, definitely very satisfying. But what also made it satisfying was the 4-0 win. Did I say 3-0 before? I meant to say 4-0 win over Vegas 2 nights earlier. To say this was unexpected is an understatement. I mean, Vegas is and has been the best team in the league more or less all season long. They don't lose very much at home. They don't get shut out very much at home. And this was, I think Arthur Staple had a note that they've been shut out, I don't know however many times. It's not a lot, but the Islanders, for some reason, have 2 of them. They've shut out Vegas twice in Vegas. It's a little bit crazy. They were up 3-0 halfway through after 2 periods. Great shot from Lee in the beginning, his 19th goal. He had 20 goals all year. He's got 19 already. They had also had a good flurry at the end. Oh yeah, somebody forced a turnover, and it went to Nelson, who fed Lee in the slot for the goal number 1. And then another great steal, Romanov, who unfortunately missed the Utah game as well. I don't know what's wrong with him. I don't think they mentioned it, but steals the puck at the blue line to Barzal, drop pass to Nelson in the high slot for 2-0 lead. First goal for Brock Nelson in 18 games. Again, he would score against Utah. And then Palmieri, beautiful setup behind the net to Horvat, makes it 3-0. That second period might have been the best period they've played all season long. They were just awesome. And they limited their chances in the third. Barzal had a giveaway at the blue line with the net empty, but didn't go for a goal. Cizikas ended up clearing the puck and scoring with an empty net. And Sorokin was great. 30 saves. 3 players who have played 800 games with the Islanders all scored: Lee, Nelson, and Cizikas. Matt Martin was the only one playing with 800 games with the Islanders who did not score, but still to have 4 guys with 800 games of your franchise playing in the same game is pretty wild. And it was great. And my favorite thing about this too is Vegas had a power play goal wiped off the board in the first period because of offsides. When they scored, the crowd, of course, went crazy, and then it came off the books and they booed and everything. I'm pretty sure that was the last time that crowd was heard from the rest of the game. And I'm not saying that derisively. It was just awesome. I didn't realize it until sort of halfway through the third period. I'm like, boy, this crowd has been quiet, man. Holy crap. I mean, they were down 3-0 and the Islanders were really doing a good job of just keeping the Knights from doing really anything. And I'm like, dude, this is Vegas. Like, they put on the crazy show. They got the drums, they got the lights, they got the girls dancing, the whole thing. This place has been dead as hell this whole time, outside of that one goal that didn't count anyway. So I thought that was pretty impressive too. But I hoped at the time that this wasn't just a fluke thing. That, shit happens, kind of weird happens, and somebody shows up and beats a team that by all accounts should beat them. It happens a lot in hockey and in sports, but thankfully the win against Utah kind of wiped that idea away. But this was a lot of fun, and like you said, during the game, this was sort of pure fun. And boy, the Islanders, this might have been, we've talked about the Vancouver game being their best game. There was another game we talked about maybe being their best game. Throw this into that hat, because there's not a lot of them, but I think this one was super good and a lot of fun to watch. And beating a team that's the best in the league at the time at home by shutout is never going to get old. That's the way you always want it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And the stakes couldn't have been higher, which sounds crazy to say when it's game 41, 42, non-conference games on the road, and the Islanders were at the time 3 games under NHL 500 and however many points back of the playoffs. But when you look around the Eastern Conference wild card, Columbus has won 4 in a row.
Yeah.
We know that the Habs have been white hot. The Penguins have slowed down a little bit now, but they had their little push. Same with the Sens. The Red Wings haven't lost since the first game under Todd McClellan.
Yeah.
Like I said, the hockey gods are pushing the Rangers. I got to mention, like, the Rangers scored a goal against the Devils. They're getting all sorts of credit, whatever. They've won a couple games, but they scored a goal against the Devils that I've never seen before, which is something crazy. When Adam Fox took a slap shot and it snapped Jonathan Kovacevic's stick in half. And the puck just kept going. It didn't like stop as every other team. If someone blocks a shot, the shot is blocked. This one snapped his stick in half and went in. So they're getting pushed back into things with the hockey gods at their back, and so the Islanders, had they lost to Vegas, had they dropped any points really on this road trip, we're having a completely different conversation.
Yeah.
Entirely. So they did a great job winning, upsetting Vegas as a pretty big underdog on the road. Vegas had been 17-4 at home going into that game, with a really strong goal differential, but the Islanders were the better team. Like they deserved every bit of that result. Sorokin was really good. I like that even in a shutout, he still got some criticism from the fan base. Like it wasn't a good enough shutout from Ilya Sorokin. So he's got to improve on that. And I actually think it's funny. Like I can't think of 2 more polarizing or 2 more different goalies than Sorokin and Marcus Hogberg, where you got Sorokin, who's a smaller stature goalie. He's all finesse and athleticism and reaction and just crazy quickness. Whereas Hogberg, that's why I like to post that picture. Like there's something very symphonic about Sorokin. It sounds like when he's making his big saves, you can hear the orchestra behind him. Whereas the way Hogberg plays, looks like his equipment doesn't fit right. He's a little bit of a throwback, like a Gar Snow kind of goalie. Big, his equipment looks too big on him. You feel like he should be wearing those big shoulder pads because he's huge. And it looked like he was playing the accordion while he was tending the net. That's how I felt. He was like a Zydeco musician. There's Zydeco music playing while Hogberg's in net. I haven't really figured out Varlamov, what his soundtrack is, the score of the Semyon Varlamov experience is just yet, but I'll get there. We still have time. He's got another 3 years left on his deal. I'll find it. It only took 3 games for Hogberg, and it took just about that for Sorokin. With Varley, he's a little bit more clandestine with his style. But yeah, I mean, everything about that Vegas game was just impressive. That you felt that it didn't feel like one of those games, but until the Islanders had gone up by 3 goals, I was pretty nervous that this was going to be a classic. We played well, but just, unfortunately, that's a good team, and we knew they were going to come with their push, and we just couldn't find a way to get the 2 points, but we're happy with the 1. But they stepped on their necks. Like that was really the killer instinct has not been there for this team, and it wasn't really there in their first win of this monumental 3-game winning streak here against the Bruins, because they did not put the Bruins away, but they did put the Knights away. They showed some of that we're here to win this game mentality rather than we're just going to try not to lose against Utah. So to see that back in this team's DNA is great. I thought Barzal was really good in this game against Vegas. Lee was really good again. Nelson showed up, which was nice.
Yeah.
Fourth line was doing pretty well. Matt Martin's back in the lineup, baby. Like, oh god, that's great to see. Like Romanov, that was his best problem. Him and Polak were both really good in the first 2 games of this road trip. Polak has been much better of late as well. Dobson was really good against Utah. And Pelech was really good against Utah and Vegas too. So it just looks like the team is taking a step forward in unison here. And maybe it has something to do with the rash of injuries that they had. And, when Matt Barzal even said it before the Vegas game or before the Utah game, saying that he was humbled pretty quickly, thinking that he can come back after 20 games and just be like the same player. And I think we saw that from him, and we're seeing it a little bit with Duclair now, that it does take some time for these guys. We definitely saw it with Pelech during his annual 20-game absence. So, yeah. And then, of course, during that Utah game, that one funny thing about, a lot of, I would say half the league every season goes through like an injury cluster, like the Islanders have. The Minnesota Wild have gone through one lately. We see it with everyone but the Rangers, but like everybody deals with injuries. In it feels like they kind of compound and pile up. But what you expect is that when the injury rash ends, like Barzal's back, Duclair's back, Pelech's back. I know Mike Riley's not back yet. Varley's hurt now, but you think, okay, that's it. We're through the worst of it. But then you see Sorokin's sick, Romanov hurt. Polak takes a shot to he's like bleeding out of his nose one game, and then he takes a shot to the wrist the following game. Duclair goes into the boards awkwardly, and you're just sitting there thinking, oh, geez, like we're going to have another, where's Liam Foudy? Because he's going to get a phone call here pretty soon to come back to the Islanders because they're going through it again. But they escaped even that. So barring what we see from, what happens with Romanov. But I thought everything about both of these games was really good. I thought the way that, also worth noting, that the way Patrick Waugh kind of managed these games was pretty good. It was very clear like that Utah game was going to come down to either like a moment of brilliance or a bad break, because it was very tight. Goalies were really good. And the Islanders have been in so many of those games this season where they're the one making the mistake. Adam Pelech takes a penalty, 200 feet away from his own net, a turnover by someone in the neutral zone. We've seen so many of those games where the Islanders shoot themselves in the foot. And one way to mitigate that happening to you is to not play your bad players. And he shortened the bench considerably in that third period in Utah. And I think that had a pretty big deal. I played a pretty big part because we didn't see much of Grant Hutton. He's back, baby, too.
That's right.
Apparently wasn't feeling well. Man, give the guy the Bob Nystrom Award now for what he did last night. And we didn't see much of McLean, Martin, and Engvall in the stretch of the Utah game. It was clear that Waugh was going. He understood the importance of winning that game and maybe getting it done in regulation. So. From the coach's staff, actually, we should start with from the general manager all the way down to the third goalie. These 2 games have been really good because Lou comes out, speaks to the media in Vegas, and says, right. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. We're still in this thing, baby. We're still in this thing, and that's all the team needed to hear to play 2 of their best games of the season.
Yeah, well, I was going to say maybe it might be that they're getting healthier again, getting Barzal back, and it's interesting to hear him say that he thought he could jump back into it, but it might have something to do with the fact that Lou Lamoriello came out kind of surprising. When Lou decides I'm going to speak today, everybody's like, huh, okay. And you didn't think anything was going to sort of come of it. He wasn't going to announce the firing of John McClain or that he's going to trade somebody or whatever. And there wasn't a whole lot said that was all that interesting. He did basically the big takeaway from it was that they still believe in the team. He's not looking towards trading anybody. They can still achieve what it is that they were looking to do. The season's basically saying the season's not over. Like there's a lot of game left, and he's true. That's true. Although, if you've been following along this whole time, it might seem like the season is over any given week. And there was one quote that I thought was really, really interesting. He did talk about how, the penalty kill needs to be better. The blowing of the leads needs to stop, obviously. But I thought this quote was really interesting. This was very, way down at the bottom of the article by Arthur Staple at The Athletic. And Lou said, and this is such a totally Lou quote, because it uses words that no normal human being would ever use in ways that normal human beings would not use them. And he says, "I can't dispute your doubt because of what you've seen. I know what they're capable of, but you have to do it. My comfortability is that they have the ability to do that. In my opinion, that we have the talent in there to do that. In my opinion, we have the talent in there to do that." This is a completely insane way to say I still believe in the team. I don't know if is comfortability a real word, and if it is that the way you're supposed to use it? I don't know, but basically he's saying I believe in this team, and I think still we can make the playoffs and do something. That's basically what he's saying. But the way he says it is the most Lou Lamoriello thing I've ever heard in my entire life. It's just so funny. I can't dispute your doubt. That's a great line.
Yeah.
Did you hear this? There was no audio of this, which really sucks. So we kind of had to take it through all these articles. But like, what'd you make of Lou's impromptu press conference, and were there any particular bits that stuck out to you?
Yeah, I that quote is so so Lou. It's very you're tempted because of his accent just to say it's very RFK JFK kind of presidential, but it's really not. It's much more. It's even more classic or more than that. It's like more classical presidential than that. It's maybe we can go back to like Grover Cleveland or
Right.
Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah, exactly. Like that. Down for maybe it's FDR. Maybe that's who Lou is here. Is a little FDR for us. But yeah, really, I loved it, and one of my favorite parts about Lou is that because of the cone of silence and the vacuum that the Islanders operate in, it gets filled by everybody else, and everyone else operates under the assumption that Lou Lamoriello and the Islanders operate like every other sports team, which is not the case. Like everyone writing articles about Nelson, Brock Nelson's going to be traded. Kyle Palmieri will definitely be traded. They're going to check to see what they could get out of Pajot for Lee, and you can read those as someone who's not familiar with the Islanders and think, yeah, that makes sense. Like I can read Puckpedia, I can read, the whatever, the stats, the standings. I know what the Islanders situation is, or you can be very familiar with the Islanders and know, yeah, well, that's not how it's going to work. Like Lou is going to hold on to these guys until it's very, very clear that the Islanders are out of it. And if they even have a sniff of hope to make the playoffs, he's going to hold on to them through the season. I mean, he did it during that Murphy's Law year. He didn't trade a single person. Whether that was a good decision or bad decision is pretty dubious. But the point being, like, you can't cover the Islanders and use the same logic that you would for any other team, and not just the NHL, but sports. And Lou then once every couple months fills in the universe of silence here and says, yeah, no, like that's, I mean, I told you back in October, I believe in these guys, and we might be a couple games below 500 and out of the playoffs, but I still believe in these guys. I wasn't lying to you back then. I was being honest, and I'm being honest with you now. And it's a lot more dangerous to not take Lou Lamoriello at his word than to take him at his word. And that makes him very unique as a general manager in sports, right? And we talk about it all the time. Coaches lie, GMs lie, like that's their job. So when Pierre LeBrun does his whistle stop tour interviewing the GMs of the league, which apparently is his job, all his job is right now, but they all say the same thing, or they lie to him, and he then presents it as if they're speaking whole heart truth. But they are professional liars, just like the insiders, except for Lou. Lou's a little bit different. Like he doesn't lie. He doesn't say anything, but he doesn't lie. And I don't think he was lying here. Like that. And maybe we're reading too much into it, but I don't think it was a coincidence that Brock Nelson then finally busts out of his little slump here.
Right.
Just mere hours after Lou Lamoriello says, "Yeah, I'm not trading him." Hasn't even crossed my mind yet. Yeah, that was great. I liked it. It kind of quieted everyone because, as we said in the last episode, the worst part of these seasons going the way they do is that losing has consequences, and it means that you're distracted by other people coveting your players. Oh, what's Brock Nelson like? What do you think it's going to cost for Brock Nelson?
Right.
Like, I don't want to deal with that. And thankfully, because of this little 3-game winning streak, we have a couple days where we don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, for sure. And that also is what made the timing of Lou's talk a little bit weird, because they're coming off a big win in Boston, and all of a sudden it's like, why does he want to talk now? But yeah, basically he just said, and I know there are people out there that want this team to trade everybody. I get that there's logic behind it. I get that. I understand. I don't particularly think this team is making the playoffs still either, despite this momentous 3-game winning streak. But Lou Lamoriello doesn't operate that way. And like, there's no way on earth Lou Lamoriello is just going to like wave a white flag and start trading guys unless he absolutely is forced to. So we're going to talk about the Islanders' upcoming homestand in a few minutes, but unless they full face plant in this next couple of weeks coming up and really fall, double digits out of the race, I can't imagine. Even if they did, I don't think he would do anything. Because like you said, I mean, even in the worst possible times during his era, he still hasn't done anything like that. I mean, the only guy who's been traded, and I wrote about this at the Patreon, like the only person who's been traded really that was seen as kind of a key cog was Anthony Beauvillier. He was the only guy who was moved, and that was to get Bo Horvat. So it's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense, and then obviously Beauvillier has played for half the league since then, but he's the only guy who's been moved. Everybody else who left, I mean, they traded first round picks for Palmieri and Pajot. And if you could name who those guys are, you're a better fan than I am, because I can't. Like, those guys have yet to make an impact. I know Frank Nazar is playing for Chicago now, and he was the first round pick that went to the Habs that they then traded to Chicago for Kirby Dach. So he's one guy I kind of keep an eye on a little bit, but the Hawks have a very long way to go, obviously. But I mean, the only person who's left this team in an active trade was Anthony Beauvillier. I mean, that doesn't count Jordan Eberle leaving in an expansion draft and guys, walking away as free agents. But yeah, Lou isn't the type to just make a move just because, to clear the decks or something like that. So we'll have to see. But that being said, like we talked about last time, we were hoping that there would be tweaks made, changes made. Their bottom 6 hadn't been that good this year. Their penalty killing obviously has been horrible. Their power play is still pretty bad despite this winning streak. We thought that there could be some changes made there, but so far there hasn't been. And, maybe those guys got the message. And I don't think they're going to provide much in terms of offense anymore. The bottom 6. I do think it's funny that Matt Martin is in there. I got a question. I'm sorry, I can't remember who sent it to me, but they emailed me asking if that was maybe, an impetus to winning, is putting Matt Martin back in the lineup, and maybe guys, like having him in there. It's possible. I don't know. I wouldn't go that far, but it's definitely possible that maybe, having Matt Martin in there is great. And I thought it was very funny that like Matt Martin is in the Islanders lineup while Cal Clutterbuck is playing in the Islanders Rangers alumni game. I can imagine like half of the guys on the team, and a lot of the Rangers, I'm probably were like going up to him and being like, dude, shouldn't you be playing for the Islanders now? Like, weren't you just playing? And he's like, no, he hasn't actually officially retired yet. So I'm sure that must've been a weird feeling, but he had a hat trick. So I thought that was kind of funny. But, but yeah, all this is just to say what you just said. Winning cures a lot. And by winning 3 games in a row, the Islanders have gotten the vultures off their back. They've gotten the GM off their back. They've gotten the media off their back. Everything's okay now. Nobody's talking about empty seats at UBS Arena, or what we can get for how the Islanders can get Elias Pettersson. That stuff is all quiet now because they won 3 games in a row, and it's some pretty tough places to play, I gotta tell you. Right. So we'll see how this goes coming up in the next couple of weeks.
And they have a rubber chicken in the locker room, apparently, that Anders Lee discovered after the Vegas win.
Really?
Yeah. Oh,
Why
yeah.
did I not see this?
Ethan Sears has has been all over it. Apparently, there was, I guess, whoever was using the locker room before the Islanders left a rubber chicken in there, and they won. So Lee said that they're keeping it with them, and Matt Barzal got the rubber chicken. And you know what? The fact that the point I was going to make was the fact that you don't know that there's a rubber chicken
Right.
in the Islanders locker room tells you everything that, you know, we went in pretty deep on the hockey media last week, so don't need to go too far into it this week, but let's just pretend that the New York Rangers or Toronto Maple Leafs or the Carolina Hurricanes discovered a rubber chicken in the locker room after a big win, their most impressive win of the season in Vegas. The Athletic would hire 2 more Toronto writers to celebrate and to make sure that someone, hey, we need more bandwidth here because Cloak is Cloak's gonna do the rubber chicken beat. He'll be the guy who's gonna document each passing of the chicken and write a little story about how that player got here and got the chicken and what it means to them to be bestowed this honor. But no, the Islanders have a rubber chicken in their locker room, which was good. I had Zorns over the weekend too, so
that's a
lot
good
of
chicken right there.
Yeah, a lot of chicken in Islander country this weekend. But yeah, so the rubber chicken is along for the ride. And I was kind of half hoping that Lamoriello took it away, just to like play into the role that he gets kind of painted over with by everyone in the hockey media as the despotic general manager who's out of touch and not the guy that everyone loves. But so I was really hoping like he would confiscate it like a teacher would if someone like brought a cell phone to school back in the day.
Right. The article by Ethan Sears is titled from the 10th, so Friday, and it says Islanders show spark but still searching for consistent identity. And the opening paragraphs there are Dateline, Salt Lake City. Lou Lamoriello had just admitted Thursday morning that his team is still searching for an identity when reporters walked into the Islanders dressing room and spotted a toy rubber chicken in Anders Lee's stall. The captain had found it unclaimed inside T-Mobile Arena and, quote, "It's coming with us," he said. So now, so this rubber chicken now is part of the Islanders traveling crew. So welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard to the rubber chicken. Really, really do hope when Lou finds out about it, he takes it. That would just be so funny to hear the pearl clutching if that story gets out there. Islanders GM Lamoriello confiscates good luck rubber chicken from team, and we get the pitchforks and torches out for Lou over a rubber chicken. So as much as I love this chicken already for giving us a couple wins, and it does feel like this team needed something like that to turn the season around, like major league style.
Maybe it's just like an ounce of like levity, like just a little bit of fun, it goes a long way.
Yes, man. I mean, we might have to write a satire, a Luke Fox jukebox satire about this in the style of Luke Fox jukebox or Josh Cloak about this chicken and the levity that it brings. But as much as I think that this is a good thing to have like a totem like this in the locker room for a team that's wound maybe a little too tight considering how things have gone. I am rooting for Lou to take it away. So we'll see.
Well, we'll see. This rubber chicken, if the Islanders really do turn this around and go on a run here, make the playoffs and do something, this rubber chicken could be their version of the Blues Gloria. This like the Laura Branigan song that rocketed the Blues to a Stanley Cup, and then we got to name the chicken Gloria because they, kind of. So I just want to know more about how this chicken ended up in the T-Mobile Arena locker room. Who left it there? Like, how did that?
He tweeted a picture of it. Well, not a picture of it that I just retweeted. But it's not a classic looking rubber chicken. It's almost like a Vegas. It is, but it's got like some Vegas pizzazz to it. An Elvis wig on it. He's wearing a white what you would call it, like a tank top with a chain, like a gold chain with the money symbol on it.
Apparently,
sideburns. Yep, and then and a bathing suit, like a Hawaiian style bathing suit. So this isn't this is a very very interesting looking rubber chicken's got a mom tattoo on the chicken. This thing is and look, it's the type of thing that if it does work and the Islanders have a strong homestand, maybe they win the first few games of this homestand. Maybe people are bringing rubber chickens to the game and throwing them on the ice, and the hockey media once again is talking about how classless Islander fans are hurling chickens onto the ice. Why can't they be more like Flyers fans and boo Cutter Gauthier in his return game? Why couldn't they be more like the people in Seattle or who are throwing salmon on the ice or octopus? They're throwing rubber chickens. These guys, these
definitely
mouth breathers.
Yeah, that's definitely what's going to happen. I'm telling you right now. But you know what? Why don't we'll have that conversation on the other side, where we're going to talk about the Islanders games coming up that include games against the Flyers, and we're going to debut a new PBS style feature that I'm very, very excited to get on with. This is something we've wanted to do for a really long time, so I hope people enjoy it. But we will get to that on the other side, so meet us over there. Thanks. And now a word from our sponsors. First is always VintageIceHockey.com, where you can get t-shirts, hoodies, jerseys, and more featuring over 100 classic hockey logos. Vintage Ice Hockey now carries a full line of Islanders Anxiety merch featuring our blue and orange brain logo, as well as our Al Arbor and the Island shirts. And as always, our portion of the sales go directly to the Center for Dementia Research. That is VintageIceHockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. They offer a Rosé, a Pinot Grigio, and a Pinot Noir that was named a Top 100 Best Buy by Wine Enthusiast magazine. All are delicious, priced at less than $15 a bottle, and available at local wine shops and at UBS Arena. Learn more at thepinotproject.com. Please drink responsibly. Okay, so the Islanders have had their short road trip and are now back at UBS Arena for a 7-game homestand. Count them, 7. That's a lot. And it's against teams, for the most part, that the Islanders are actually chasing and can get points against. And it starts this week. They've got a game against the Ottawa Senators on Tuesday. It's a 7:30 start. They have a game on Thursday against the Philadelphia Flyers, also 7:30. And then the 18th on Saturday against the San Jose Sharks, also at 7:30. I believe the 18th is their the Ring of Honor game, the Brent Sutter Islanders Hall of Fame game. May also be Alumni Day. I'm not sure, but these are 3 teams, frankly, that the Islanders can and should beat. The Sharks are the Sharks, obviously. The Senators have crashed hard since their little run that put them back into playoff contention. And the Flyers are extremely inconsistent, very much like the Islanders. They can win a game or lose it on any given night, but with the added bonus of they just don't know what they're going to get from their goaltending. We've been talking about them, so we might as well just get to them. The Flyers beat the Anaheim Ducks 6-0 on Saturday night. Cutter Gauthier's first game in Philly since he decided he didn't want to play for the Flyers and necessitated a trade. They were chanting "fuck you, Cutter." They had signs and stuff, and people were getting on his case. And at one point, I put out on Blue Sky, I was like, "Good for the Flyers, like that. Fuck that guy. Like, you let the hate flow through you." And I got some pushback. A friend of mine was like, "Yeah, but he's just a kid." I'm like, "Well, too bad. Like, you're a lot nicer than I am." And honestly, after being made a pariah along with other Islanders fans, after we dared to vocalize our hatred for a player who didn't want to play on our team anymore, I feel a kinship with the Flyers here. They're a division rival, but in that moment, I got it, and I was with them. And I would have booed that kid too. One person told me to seek help, and I blocked them because fuck off. This is my Twitter feed, my Blue Sky feed, and I can have what I want on here, and I don't need to hear from you. But it was fun. And, the players afterwards said, having the crowd be that up for the game and be energetic, regardless of the reasoning, really helped them. And that was a big, huge win for them. However, that being said, the Islanders are going to play the Flyers 3 times in the next 3 weeks. So they are right behind them, 1 point behind them. And actually, they have the same amount of points as the Islanders do right now. And so getting a win over those guys, Cutter Gauthier, hangover or not, is super important. Senators, too, are right in that mix. And then the Sharks, I mean, come on. You guys got to beat the Sharks at home, especially on Brent Sutter night. Jesus Christ. So just looking at these 3 games right here, these are winnable games. I mean, are you confident that the Islanders can keep this thing going? And maybe we'll look, by the next time we speak, we'll be looking at a 6-game winning streak? Or do you think this is going to, unfortunately, be where they fall flat on their faces again?
No, I'm not confident in it. Before I get to that, I will chime just real quick on the
Yeah.
Flyers thing. That yeah, it was. I agree with you. If I was a Flyers fan, or if that situation happened to the Islanders,
Mm.
I'd absolutely be all over this guy. I understand like he's young or whatever, but like you're when you become a professional athlete, you do kind of sign up for you're playing. You're in the arena, and if you know, it's just part of what you are
Mm.
as a profession and person. Um, there's a big difference between a professional hockey player and getting on someone like that than what we see every year at the World Juniors when what goes on in Canada is very
Seriously.
different. So I do want to create a clear marker there. But I'll also say that the thing that really pissed me off about this whole situation from the get-go was how excited everybody was to see what Flyers fans cook up for this situation. And I mean, I know Frank Saravalli, the 35-year-old writer, was talking about how in the summer, how Flyer fans don't forget and such, and insinuating it was going to be a long night for Cutter Gauthier, and how the entire league will have this date circled. And I had no idea it was happening. I know that these two teams played like a week ago in Anaheim, and I was like, oh, that must have been the game they were talking about. I don't remember. And then it happened, and the poor National Football League, tough break for them, scheduling some playoff games on Saturday night, going up against the Cutter Gauthier return to Philadelphia game, because I can't imagine anybody was watching playoff football rather than what was happening in Philadelphia, which is what you'd be told from the members of the hockey media who I think that live in this bubble that think hockey is important in terms of the cultural fabric of this country. There were some people like, oh man, the Flyers fans are giving it to him and stuff. And there wasn't one person being like, how could they be doing this to this guy? At least on Twitter that I saw. Which just goes to show you how differently the fan bases are treated, and the Islanders are one of a few that were derided for being passionate about someone who spurned them pretty terribly and cowardly, returning the way that he did. And I remember that Scott Wheeler said it was going to be an embarrassing night for the Islanders and their fans during that game. I didn't see any of that for Flyers coming from that same quadrant of hockeydom. So I do want to note that. And I will say that I'm not confident because this is just how this team has inspired me, right? Like they've inspired us to not be inspired. So until the game is done and dusted, I know they open with Ottawa on Tuesday, huge game. Absolutely huge game for both teams. The Senators are going to be without Linus Ullmark for a while. The Islanders need to take care of business in that game. 100% need to take care of business in that game. So you got that. It's really a 7-game, a must-win 7-game homestand in a way. I know they're not going to win all 7 games, but when you look at the opponents, you're starting with the Senators, and then you got the Flyers, Sharks, Blue Jackets, Flyers. It's team you're competing with for the wild card spot, team you're competing for a wild card spot with Sharks, team that's currently holding the wild card in the Blue Jackets, and then team you're competing for a wild card spot in Philadelphia against. So 4 out of the first 5 games, you really need to make hay and come away with like a 4-1 record. In a weird way, the one game that you can afford to lose, as long as you win if you do win 4 out of the 5, like go right ahead and lose that Sharks game as long as you win the other ones. But they have to take care of business. And the scariest thing is that this team, it takes so little for this team to lull us back in to thinking that they are putting things back together, right? They had that one win against Pittsburgh, and they're like, okay, go do that again the next night, 3-game losing streak. They had that one win against St. Louis when they won 3-1. It looked pretty comprehensive. And that was a part of a stretch where they won like 1 out of 6 or something like that. It was it was not a good stretch at all, and not a situation where they were going to go build on it, because then they played Detroit and Boston and Washington and did not. That was they're 1-6. That was their one win during a 6-game stretch. So they've kind of had these they've been blips of kind of proof that they can be a good hockey team. But until those blips turn into something more than that, I won't believe it. And it's the same thing with like Marcus Hogberg. Great story so far. He looks really good in every time he stepped on the ice for the Islanders. But the people who are like, okay, we could trade Varlamov now. Like this guy should be. Hey, maybe you're going to end up being right, but let's slow down. Like this team has won 3 games in a row once this season. So let's just, before we start putting the cart before the horse here, let's see what they do on Tuesday and then Thursday.
I had a terrible thought that like, well, if Sorokin isn't 100% by Tuesday, they might need to start Hogberg. And then I was like, ooh, that's where things get really bad. And I remember when like Brian Straight would have an okay game and he'd be like, oh, maybe he's going to be okay. And then he would play again the next game and he was right back to being terrible again. It was like, he could only play in like 1 or 2 game stretches before. And that third game was always a disaster. So I was like, oh man, I hope that this doesn't happen to Hogberg.
It's like you're talking about the alumni game. Rob Schremp played in that game, and Rob Schremp once out of 8 games would just be like, "Holy shit, that's the best play I've ever seen." He's the best most gifted hockey player I've ever seen. And then you'd watch him, disappear for a while. So I think that the way to handle it is probably Sorokin. If he's back, he's got to take like 2 out of every 3 here during the stretch, and if you can't be comfortable with that, then I don't know what to tell you, because we see stories like this all the time where a goalie will come in and play really well, and then the kind of adrenaline sugar rush wears off. But if Hogberg can handle maybe the Sharks game, that would be great. Like it's to keep Ilya fresh. And the team in general has played like that Rob Schremp or Brian Straight, where they play well and they just don't build on it. And just a 1-3 game losing streak 42 games into a year doesn't mean that this team is back. As much as I hate to say it, and trust me, I'm saying this, but I'm fully back. Like I'm here. This is a 7-game homestand for their lungs. And I'll tell you what, like after that loss to the Maple Leafs on the second at home when they lost 2-1 because of the Anapellic penalty game. If you told me that this game 1 of the 7-game homestand would feel almost like a playoff game, I would signed up for that right away, because it really does feel like the Islanders. This is like a playoffs to a weird playoffs to stay in the playoff race or something. This homestand, they have to get there's 14 points available, 9 at a minimum, 10 would be probably the real minimum, but I'll say 9 just in case they lose to the Senators and I want to stay invested. Because the opponents they're playing, the games that they're coming off of, the performances are coming off of, and as you said, like there's not too many games between the homestand and then the frozen face-off thing that we're all gonna best on best, baby. Don't really that we're all gonna ignore. So it's a terrifying terrifyingly big opportunity ahead of the Islanders, and so far this year they've gone over in those situations. So I can't remember a homestand this long, and maybe that's not true. Maybe they I know they have 1 or 2 a year where they have one, but coming at this time of the year, I feel like the Islanders haven't had one like this in quite a while. I remember last year they had a long one. Right after it started with that Sharks game that they blew, and then they won a few games in a row, and it looked like they were getting back into it. But in my mind, at least, I always assume the Islanders do terrible on these long homestands.
Yeah, well, I just feel like they've been on the road this entire season. Like it just feels like they've barely played at home at all, and so it's kind of funny that it's all kind of in this one big chunk. They have a 4-gamer, really 5 and 6 because they play in Pittsburgh.
Buy stock in that those coffee shops on 7th Avenue in Garden City, because the guys are home for a couple weeks here. There's going to be a lot of coffee going down in Garden City and Manhasset and such. So get ready for you might, if the prices of your coffee might be going up because of how long these guys are going to be home. They're here through the end of the month, basically. So.
Yeah, basically, right. And then their one road game is in Philly, like because obviously they got to play the Flyers again. So, and then they go to Florida, but we'll talk about that when we get there. But yeah, huge opportunity. If it's the Lou thing that got them, kind of shook them out of their malaise, great. If it was Barzell coming back and playing like he's, got his ass on fire, great. If it's Lee just finding a rubber chicken in the Vegas locker room, whatever it is,
Yeah.
I don't care. It doesn't matter. Just
Yeah.
if you want to make the playoffs, this is where that's going to get done.
It's funny that we're almost we talked last year a lot about how predictions are so useless, because
Right.
if you had told us, hey, Patrick Waugh is going to be coaching the New York Islanders, I'd be like, oh, there's got to be like another Patrick Waugh situation, right? Is this like someone else being named Connor McDavid or
two Peter Sikoras?
Two Peter Sikoras, right? Yeah. But if you had told me that before the season started, that at one point Patrick Waugh would coach this team, I'd run away and hide, because I would be thinking I'm in some sort of dream or simulation. Whereas this time around, if you told me that, hey, if there are rubber chickens raining down on the ice at UBS Arena by the end of this homestand, it means that the Islanders are on their way to big things. You'd tell me to give my head a shake. So, but that's where we are here at this point in the season. The Islanders' season may have been saved by a rubber chicken, and we may start seeing rubber chickens on the ice at UBS Arena in due course. And
oh my god,
that would be a welcome sight, because that would mean that this rubber chicken, this Elvis rubber chicken, has some magic to it.
From rats to rubber chickens, you never know.
From rats to rubber chickens, right?
It could be something. We'll see. Okay, but yeah, so keep an eye open for those, and it's a normal 3-game week. They're all spread out, no back to backs, which is nice too. They do have one next week, but we'll talk about that then. Okay, here finally we have gotten to the point when we can introduce our new bit. We're very excited about this. It's something we talked about over the last week or so, and took a little bit of research, but I'm very excited to debut this because it's a little bit different than the ones we've been doing. So, from the makers of Master Leaf Theater and Ranger Piece Theater and Master Pens Theater, and in the grand tradition of PBS detectives such as Sherlock Holmes, Miss Marple, and Hercule Poirot, comes our latest production we are calling the Michael Russo Mysteries. Okay, so before we explain what the Michael Russo Mysteries are, we need to, I think, explain who Michael Russo is, although probably most of you know. So Michael Russo is the longtime beat writer for the Minnesota Wild. Before that, he's been there forever, but before that, he covered the Panthers. Before that, he was a paperboy for Newsday. He's actually originally from the island, and like a lot of people, came to hockey through the Dynasty Islanders. But he's the Minnesota guy. We're going to be making fun of him here, but he is in all seriousness, a very well-connected dude in NHL circles, and he's never seen anything that he didn't offer an opinion on. But he has a very signature writing style. How would you describe the Michael Russo writing style when it comes to covering the Wild?
Let's think here. Oh God,
so many ways to go.
Yeah, it's Michael Russo's writing style. It's very it's those montages and I don't know if there's one in not montages, what would you call it, when someone is narrating over like the beginning of a movie to like scene set, or I keep thinking about Mean Girls being like, I moved to wherever, I moved to Del Boca Vista as a teenager, and they're kind of just narrating through
narration, voiceover, that kind of thing.
Yeah, something like that. It feels like that almost in a way, like a movie targeted at teenage girls, and he is the narrator, the main character narrator. Almost like Clueless, right? Clueless, that movie, that show, like the Alicia Silverstone character in Clueless, as if you took Alicia Silverstone and made her the beat writer for the Minnesota Wild. That's how I would describe his writing style. And her character name is
Cher.
Cher, right? Yeah. So if you took Cher from Beverly Hills High School and made her the beat writer for this version of the Minnesota Wild, that's That's how it is. Like excuse me, Mean Girls, 10 Things I Hate About You, 13 Going on 30. Those kind of guilty pleasure movies that we've all seen and know well.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Legally
how
Blonde,
Legally,
featuring
Legally Blonde, right?
possible Islanders co-owner Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
No, but definitely, yeah, there's definitely a fanboy-ish quality to it. And what makes it funnier is that he covers the Minnesota Wild, who are basically the most mid-forgettable professional team on the planet, right? Like
Yeah.
there's a few candidates for that role. They're almost all hockey teams. Yeah, the Blue Jackets, the Wild are one of them, the Anaheim Ducks, like these teams that seem to barely exist. The New York Islanders, that if you asked a normal person on the street, they've never heard of them. Meanwhile, they've been in operation for 30 years. Yeah. So he tends to write about the Wild in a way that makes it seem like the Wild are the only team on the planet. He just wrote one the other day. We're not going to be using this one today. But he wrote about the Wild having injury troubles, which you talked about before. Also, yeah, okay. Kirill Kaprizov is out. That's a huge problem for the Wild. They've got who's the other guy? Jared Spurgeon has been out, and these other guys have all been out. But that's like, I think every team in the NHL has guys. The Islanders haven't had their full lineup at any point this entire season. So like, yeah, okay, that sucks for them, but like we're all dealing with this here. So that's the kind of thing that he writes about, and he does it in such a way that it's like every player for the Wild is the most unique sunflower in the garden, right? Like he's the most incredible person. This game is the most incredible something, or in a loss, it is devastating and disastrous for whatever the Wild have going on. So that brings us to the Michael Russo Mysteries. So we wanted to do like a Michael Russo theater, and I was like, I want to do something a little bit different. So the way this is going to be done is that I will read a passage from a Michael Russo work, whether it's tweet, article, whatever it is. And you will have to guess what player he is talking about. I've removed the player's name. I've tried to, mix some stuff around, but really retain the spirit of what he's writing here. And so it's up to you to discern what player Michael Russo is talking about in these passages. Do you think you're ready for this challenge?
Yeah, I would say maybe. Unfortunately, I am one of the most well-equipped people on the planet for this specific challenge, and I hope it can take me places.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I'll tell you where it's not going to take somebody. It's definitely not going to bring Michael Russo to Weird Islanders, the podcast, which is what I was kind of hoping for at some point. But I will say, if people like this, and I would certainly hope you do, please let us know, because if it does work, I already envision a spin-off series called The Mark Lazarus Mysteries, where we do the same exact thing for Mark Lazarus articles, which are basically the same exact thing, just about the Blackhawks and a lot more pessimistic, because the Blackhawks aren't that good. but let's see if we can get through the Michael Russo Mysteries first. Okay, so I have three passages here. We're going to call them 3 chapters. And again, I've removed the player's name, but I'm going to read them in a detective-y type voice. If you can guess who the player is, we'll give you 1 point. All right, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. First chapter is actually a tweet. Chapter 1, the first book of the Michael Russo Mysteries. The bags are all stacked outside the Minnesota Wild locker room. He is backing up. In Carolina, the backup sits all game in the tunnel by the locker room. He's going to have a lot of time on his hands. Seems like a perfect opportunity to say hi to his old pals. Smiley face emoji. Okay, that right there is a perfect Michael Russo tweet. So now that you've heard it, what player do you think Michael Russo is talking about?
Wow, man. It can't be Marc-Andre Fleury, because he retired 3 seasons ago when he did the retirement tour that Michael Russo
right
covered ad nauseum. But you know what? Maybe it is Marc-Andre Fleury. That prankster might have. He's such a prankster that maybe when he's back, he retired without even retiring. So, is it Marc-Andre Fleury, who is another guy who, if you can't find a way to root for Marc-Andre Fleury, are you even a hockey fan?
It is indeed Marc-Andre Fleury. Very good. You figured it out. He is the backup in that game in Carolina. Backup was kind of the big giveaway there. But yes, that tweet was about Marc-Andre Fleury. And, we'll see where this takes us throughout the rest of the Michael Russo Mysteries. Okay, let's go on to chapter 2. This is also from The Athletic and is also from a game this year. So here we go. Maybe the visitor's staff expected him to seek some payback, because we're told he had to search long and hard for Crosby's bag. He dug all the way to the bottom, and voila! there was number 87, Stuff. When Crosby arrived at the game Sunday night against Carolina, he discovered, we're told, Vaseline all over his visor, his skate laces upside down, and beef sticks in his jock. He knew Crosby wasn't going to skate Sunday morning, so he decided to keep it tame. He wouldn't mess with his old friend too much before game. Quote, I just had a little fun, he told The Athletic, laughing. Wait, I've said too much. It wasn't me. I wasn't there. Okay, so what player is this particular section about from this Michael Russo article?
You know, and it's not like Michael Russo. You'd want to think it's Marc-Andre Fleury, but it's not like Michael Russo to spend so much time and energy on covering the daily movements of Marc-Andre Fleury, who, as I said, retired from the NHL a couple seasons ago after he went on a retirement tour that was whistle stopped by Michael Russo. So I don't think it's going to, but he played with crowds and he's such a prankster. And that quote where he said, I had a little fun is so colorful and so Flower. Like, who else would say something like that besides Flower, right?
Yeah.
Can you imagine another NHL player saying something like that? I can't. He's definitely very, very unique and different from everyone else. You know what? I'll just go. I'm going to guess Marc-Andre Fleury.
Very good. 2 for 2. It is, in fact, Marc-Andre Fleury.
Wow.
That is who Michael Russo is talking about here. What a prankster. That's crazy. You're like Sherlock Holmes of the Michael Russo mysteries. This is incredible. Okay. So let's go to chapter 3, possibly our final chapter, but if we have some time, we'll move on to, I have a denouement or what is it? Epilogue, if we want to do that too. But this is chapter 3, and this is about an incident that happened a couple of years ago. So this wasn't from this year, but I'll read it and see if you can figure out who the final character in the Michael Russo mysteries is. Okay, here we go. It was the 2016-17 season, and the defending Cup champs were in Tampa for a road game. Rick Tocchet, then an assistant coach, says he, the player, somehow snagged one of their trainer's iPhones, downloaded the dating app Tinder, and set up a profile for an unsuspecting staff member. Tocchet recalls the fake message. Quote, I'm a trainer for the team. We won the Cup last year. If you want to come to the game, that was the long and short of it. He got her front row seats, club seats. He rolled out the red carpet for her. They were packing the bus up, and the girl was with the families in that section and waiting. So the trainer walks by her, and he has no clue. She's like, do I give him a hug? Do I say hi? He was like, what is this girl doing? But they ended up dating for a couple of months. So the story turned out real good. Okay, let me just explain what happened here. So basically this player, who I'll ask you about in a second, stole a trainer's iPhone, downloaded Tinder, set up an account, made a date with a woman who had no idea that she wasn't talking to the actual trainer. They met at this game, completely unknown that they were there to meet each other, and they ended up going out for a few months, so it's okay. But it was all basically a prank set up by this player.
Man. Well, I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury is such a celebrated kind of spokesman for the game. He's a good pro, genuinely. And everyone, if you're not the type of person that roots for Marc-Andre Fleury, you're probably not a real hockey fan. But I can't really see him going this too far with something like this, where he's messing with someone's personal life. But, Rick Tocchet, assistant coach of the team, and I guess Michael Russo, since it's, he does like one Fleury story an afternoon. There's enough evidence here to say Marc-Andre Fleury, and plus I've already got the first 2 right. And it's dripping with prank, which is obviously Fleury's MO. So I'm going to go Marc-Andre Fleury.
Wow. Incredible. Great detective work. You're like Batman a little bit. You did figure it out. It is, in fact, Marc-Andre Fleury. So, again, to recap, Fleury stole a man's phone, downloaded Tinder, set up a date with a woman, an unsuspecting woman, with this trainer, and I guess it was a prank. And what Tocchet's saying is, it all worked out okay. They went out for a while and then stopped. But like, all I could think about was reading this. This is all told in this sort of like, wow, isn't this hilarious? Exactly what you've been saying. Like, wow, if you don't love this, you don't love the game of hockey. I'm reading this, and all I'm thinking is, I'm glad this worked out for these two people, because I'm looking at a potential HR nightmare if it didn't work out okay. Like, I'm not trying to open a can of worms or anything, but like, this is way worse than like putting Vaseline on somebody's visor. This is like, what the hell? What are you talking about? I'm glad that woman had a sense of humor, because she could have sued the pants off of the Penguins, or I guess the whoever they were, maybe Vegas were with at the time. I'm not even sure who he was with, but geez, this was like, man, I don't know if this is the kind of story that's like, you probably should put in The Athletic, but I was like, geez.
As long as it's Marc-Andre Fleury at the
right,
at
it's okay.
center, it's okay.
Right.
Because as we've learned about this, the way hockey media and sports media works is, not only do you need to make sure that the big market teams have plenty of coverage, wall to wall coverage, and the small market teams have very little, but you also need to make sure that there is a separate beat writer whose main job it is to cover the colorful characters of this sport, like the prankster himself, Marc-Andre Fleury. Because the Minnesota Wild are, as you said, I wouldn't say that they're a needle mover in terms of the sporting culture here in the United States, but they are lucky enough to have 2 writers at The Athletic, which is more than half the league, or 2 more than half the league. And one of those writers' main job is to just document the shenanigans of one Marc-Andre Fleury, who, as we could tell from the Michael Russo Mysteries here, the debut episode, that we might have, this might be one of those novels, those mystery novels where the perpetrator is the person you least suspect, and it could be the narrator here, because we're in another situation where if I'm Marc-Andre Fleury and Michael Russo is coming up to me every day and being like, "Hey, you pull any funny pranks last night in Nashville on the guys?" I'd be like, "Can someone get this to stop?" You wonder why I was trying to retire 3 years ago. It's all very strange, and once again, it's another situation where I'm wondering, where's the editor to be like, "Are you filing another story about Marc-Andre Fleury?" Like, this is really weird.
That whole story I just read was from an article that was only about Fleury's pranks that came out last year, and there was a whole bunch of them. And every single time, the other funny thing about, like, and Russo's not the only one that does this. Like, Elliot Friedman also does this, and there are others as well. Whenever hockey people talk about a person or an incident being the funniest thing they've ever seen, or the funniest person they know, or this prank was the funniest prank they'd ever heard of, and then they write about it in a story, that incident or person or whatever instantaneously and without exception becomes the unfunniest thing you have ever read in your entire life. It is the least funny thing. And so this whole article is about all of these hilarious pranks that Fleury has pulled, and every single one just ends with you being like, really? It just sucks. Like, why would I do that? Why would you write? Like, maybe if it was done in almost like a sitcom-y way, or like Fleury telling the story, maybe it would be funny. But I don't know, just the way he writes these articles, these pranks, it just makes it seem just like a huge pain in the ass for everybody. And it's just like, sounds like him being kind of a jerk. And it's a little bit like when Friedman, I'm convinced that Elliot Friedman thinks that Kevin Bieksa is the funniest human being on the planet. Like, you take Chris Rock and, Jerry Seinfeld and George Carlin and any other 2 comedians, roll them all into one, and that is Kevin Bieksa. And I have never heard a single funny thing this guy said in my entire life. But to Elliot Friedman, Kevin Bieksa is a comedy genius. There's nobody funnier on the planet. And I'm sorry, I'm just not buying it. Like, he could tell me that a million times, and I'm not going to buy. Just like Jeff Merrick talked about how much fun it was hanging out with Mike Milbury. And it's like, I can kind of buy that, but at the same time, as the guy who was my team's GM, I'm never going to find Mike Milbury funny. I don't care what he says or does. Like, it's just not funny to be funny to me. But to me, just this, and I don't know, maybe it's my problem. I'm being a stick in the mud, but like, the reading the stories about Marc-Andre Fleury's pranks just makes me dislike this person that much more.
Right.
And it's just like,
and we're not, once again, like, we're, as we said last week, we're not the target audience for this, right? So this is like the two guys in the Muppets,
right?
Making fun of stuff that shouldn't even be on our radar. Like, why do we know this stuff as well as we do? We are the losers here. Like, we get that. But at the same time, what's frustrating is there's all this, there's resources and time devoted to stories like this.
Mm.
And as we said last week, like, we just kind of want to know what's going on in the
Right.
league. Like, I don't need to know that Marc-Andre
Right.
Fleury has a super soaker in his locker and he sprays Jake Middleton with it every time Jake Middleton finishes the night -2.
Right.
Like, I just don't need to know that stuff. If you want to add color to the season and to a season and to a team and to a story, by all means.
Yeah.
But at some point it just becomes, I don't know, overkill is the right word, or
Yeah.
it's almost like feels like pandery and performative. It's and we kind of joke about how these guys now all refer to each other if you work at like the same company as their teammate.
Yeah.
But it feels like Mike Russo has the same kind of condition that a lot of people do in this kind of new age of hockey media and maybe sports media, but I'm not totally sure if it transcends into other sports, but definitely hockey media, where they're like, well, I'm part of the team. Like, my locker is right next to Marc-Andre Fleury, so why wouldn't I report on him? Like, this is the team that I cover, which means they're my team. Like, I'm on it, which you're not. You're just the beat reporter. And I will always bring up this. This is the way I always like to paint these is I always like to challenge you, the listener, if you're still with us, and if you're not, once again, don't blame you, because very niche audience for the Michael Russo Mysteries. Is imagine Andrew Gross writing about something like this in the same style, and you just because Andrew is such like a classic newspaperman, beat writer guy. Andrew could be covering the Yankees in like 1992 or the New York Islanders in 2025, and you really wouldn't tell the difference. Imagine this story coming from him, and I'd just be like, whoa, who abducted Andrew Gross and replaced him with this? Because this is not reading like what I expect out of kind of like a professional newspaperman. Really strange stuff, and once again, weird that nobody just puts their hand up and asks, why are you doing this?
Right. Well, it just occurred to me now, because we were just talking about the Islanders' rubber chicken. I guarantee that by this time next week, the rubber chicken will be a memory. Like, it will not be mentioned at all in any way, shape, or form by anybody. But I can also guarantee that there will be at least one more story about a Marc-Andre Fleury prank coming out, but from Michael Russo in that same exact time period. So, like, by the time we won't be doing the Michael Russo Mysteries next week. Again, don't worry about it. But I guarantee that by this time next week, there will be something that we could use for the Michael Russo Mysteries that will be put out, if not more than one. Because that's just how it works. But yeah, it's a little.
And why has nobody been like, why is Marc-Andre Fleury getting like this treatment for the third straight season? He had a retirement tour like this. Remember when Derek Jeter and David Ortiz had those retirement tours? Like, Marc-Andre Fleury had one of those. They were giving him gifts.
Right.
They were giving him gifts.
Cher announced another farewell tour, and I bought my wife tickets to see her first farewell tour before we were married, which is going to be 18 years this September. She's gone on at least 3 farewell tours in the time that my wife and I have been married. And I think it's just that he's just like Cher. Like, he just goes on farewell tour and then he decides he's going to come back. Yeah. He might come back next year too. He's playing pretty well. But yeah, we saw the retirement tour. I don't know why this is going on, but the retirement tour is keeping Michael Russo writing. I guess it's, without this. But then if you think this is only a Fleury thing, why don't we just do the epilogue, because we got a few more minutes here. This is not about Marc-Andre Fleury, I promise you. But this is another article about the Wild. And this is sort of, again, the Russo style is in taking the most mundane thing that this team does and making it seem like it is the most mind-boggling, mind-blowing, incredible event that has ever happened in the history of hockey. So do you want to do one more? This is not about Fleury, I promise. But it is about somebody who is on the current Wild team.
Let's do it.
Okay. I don't look at that iPad, he scoffed after he and his line mates combined for 3 goals and 7 assists during a 4-0 win over the Carolina Hurricanes on Saturday night. I say, you go here, and then I'm always open. Just throw the iPad away. Hey, whether they use the whiteboard or the iPad, it's working. What's more, 2 nights after the Wild beat the Washington Capitals, in large part to Rossi's late-tying goal and Boldy's shootout winner, and 2 games after Rossi scored twice in a win against Nashville. He also gave Rossi some sage advice at Saturday's morning skate. I told Marco, start passing the puck and stop taking all the glory and just see what happens, he said. When the old man speaks, you listen. So, in this scenario, who is the quote old man on the Minnesota Wild that is giving this sage advice of throw the iPad away and pass the puck and stop taking the glory to the younger members of the Minnesota Wild?
Man, just another thing that just doesn't happen anywhere else, right?
Exactly.
These kind of jokes and back and forth and quips between these professional athletes that spend all day, every waking moment together.
Right.
Oh man, totally unique stuff here. I'm glad that it gets out to us, the public, because I mean,
Right.
this
Who
is
would
how you
know?
grow this is how you grow the game, by knowing that someone like, I don't know, Marcus Foligno is
Right.
joking around with his teammate. I wouldn't know that they even spoke if I didn't know.
It's incredible.
Here, Michael Russo tell me
Right.
that it is now be my guest, Marcus Foligno and Marco Rossi have this kind of quippy relationship.
So, who is that? Your final guess?
That's my final answer. Unless it's Marc-Andre Fleury again.
It's definitely not Marc-Andre Fleury, but it is unfortunately also not Marcus Foligno. It is actually Matt Zuccarello.
Oh man, how could I not have got that one?
Yeah. He's 36 now, apparently. But yeah, so Zuccarello telling Rossi and who was the other guy? Matt Boldy, throw away that iPad, you kids. You with your highfalutin, high tech jibber jabber. We don't need that stuff here. This is the Minnesota Wild. Don't you know what it's like here? So anyway, but yeah, that was kind of fun. Again, you're telling me that Cal Clutterbuck hasn't been having this exact conversation with every Islander that's been called up from Bridgeport in the last 15 years.
Man, go take in a Florida Everblades game.
Yeah.
And you'll probably see the same kind of relationship between everybody on the team. It's but no, this is why you got to pay for this kind of content.
And that will do it for the first ever edition of the Michael Russo Mysteries. I hope people enjoyed that. It's a little bit different than what we normally do, but this has been something we've been talking about for a while, and we just want to get it. I mean, again, we're making fun of Russo, but he is one of the more connected guys, and so like usually when he says something, it's usually pretty well sourced and stuff. But man, the way he writes about this team as if it's never like this. We make fun of the Luke Fox jukeboxes and Mark Spectors and the other guys that we've done, and obviously Larry Brooks and the Penguins crew, Josh Yeo, and all those guys, about the way they write about these teams. But it's not just them, man. It's all over. It's an epidemic. Like it seems like there's half the markets in the NHL have one guy who writes about this team, their team, as if it is some sort of Shakespearean drama unfolding before their eyes every day. And it's like, I don't know, man, maybe you could just tell me if they're playing well or not. Like, I don't really know if it's and again, they're hurt. They're playing pretty well. The Wild have had a good season, but what's funny to me is, as good as they've been, I mean, the only thing keeping them out of first place in the division is the Winnipeg Jets, who have played lights out all season long.
Right.
Do you think for a second that this team isn't losing in the first round of the playoffs this year? Because I could
totally see them tanking out. Like, I know they built up a pretty big lead in the standings, but there's usually one team that has like a good start and then just completely falls, and you're like, oh my God, they're only 6 points, into the playoffs with 20 games left. And I could totally see it being the Wild this season. And as you said, like, it is a bit of an epidemic, and I think it's because there's one particular outlet, and I won't say if Michael Russo works for that outlet or not, that has made this their style guide almost, and because the other places look at that and be like, well, if they're doing it, that must mean it's successful. So why don't we start writing about our guys like this? And I like to say the style is that they and I think Chris Johnston in Toronto is like the master of this style, is they're writing about the season as it unfolds, as if every year they end up winning the Stanley Cup, and like this, they're the ones writing the book that they're going to write when Toronto wins the Stanley Cup, or the Minnesota Wild lift the cup, or the Pittsburgh Penguins lift the cup. They're just writing they're doing like the legwork of their book in their coverage, and most of the time They don't win the Stanley Cup. The other teams do. But that is all besides the point. And we start it right back up in September
Right.
when we start setting the scene with training camp stories about farm boys and stuff like that. So yeah, you did a great job. Very happy to have a new bit to our in our locker here that we can go to, because I think it's something that has this has been going on for far too long. And if you're gonna write like that and cover such an innocuous story like this for that long, you're gonna get got by the PBS, the people
Right.
over at PBS. So welcome to the crew, to the Michael Russo Mysteries.
We got to come up with an acronym for the PBS somehow to some way to categorize all this. But thank you very much. I tried to, that voice I tried to do, by the way, was one of an old actor named Monty Markham. I don't know if anybody out there, you have to be really old to remember this guy. But if you're a Golden Girls watcher, he's the guy who played Blanche's brother Clayton on the show in a couple of episodes. He was also on Baywatch for a long time as Captain Thorpe. He was almost cast as the $6 Million Man, but he lost out to Lee Majors. But they liked him so much they brought him back as the evil $6 Million Man to fight Lee Majors in like a couple of episodes. So Monty Markham was a great old actor, and he had a kind of a really kind of interesting voice. And he's the voice I used for the detective stories. And the thing is, ever since we had our friend Michael Smith on to do the greatest Master League Theater ever during the summer, now I feel like I got to raise my game to try and get in there. Michael, of course, is a trained actor. But I'm just trying to, keep swimming here, trying to make it interesting. But we'll see. Again, if you liked it, let us know. If you didn't like it, you could let us know very gently. But if people want to hear the Mark Lazarus mysteries, we can work on that as well. But don't worry, Master Leaf Theater, Ranger Peace Theater definitely aren't going anywhere. And if you've been following the Rangers, I feel like we might be heading towards some sort of Moby Dick style blow up here. From Larry Brooks one of these days with the Rangers. Even when they win, he's just tearing them to shreds. So we could do that every week, basically. But I hope people had fun. Okay, that's going to do it for this episode. Again, 3 games this week. We put out a bunch of stuff last week, including a brand new Weird Islanders, the podcast on Brett Lindros. It was me and Colin Stevenson from Newsday. Again, he's been covering the Rangers for many years now, and he was very surprised to hear from an Islanders podcast, but he figured it out pretty quickly, and he was really, really great. And I really thank him very much for coming on. Also, shout out to his son, Ian, who we mentioned on the show, who is still a very brave man to own an Oliver Wahlstrom jersey. I left that part actually in there. I was going to cut that out, but I thought it was kind of funny that Wahlstrom is not. That's how long these things go before they get put out. Wahlstrom was a member of the Islanders when we recorded that episode, and now he's not. Congratulations on his first goal, by the way, as a Bruin, which happened against the Panthers the other day. So there you go. But check it out if you missed it. Again, Mike wasn't on the episode, but please check it out. And again, thanks again to Colin Stevenson for coming on. He was awesome, and we had a really great time. And Brett Lindros, man, it was a year, barely a year as an Islander, but it was pretty crazy, and there was a lot to go on, to go with there, and it was a crazy story. And I don't know what's gonna, what he's been doing now. I think he got into the finance world or whatever, but it's still a cautionary tale for many reasons. So check it out. This week again, we're doing our mailbag, so check that out. If you're not a member, sign up at patreon.com/islandersanxiety to ask a question and to hear the episode. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible.com, iHeartRadio, YouTube Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave us a review where you can. Our theme song is Morning Haze by Family Dinner. Look out for their music on Spotify and check out their album, God Looks Out for Fools. Read Lighthouse Hockey every single day for your most up-to-date Islanders news and discussion. Islanders Anxiety Podcasts are part of the Fans First Sports Network. Shop VintageIceHockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. Mike, where can everybody find you on Twitter?
The Big Lebowski with 2 E's.
Follow Mike at the Big Lebowski. And any final thoughts on the Islanders' incredible, unexpected 3-game winning streak, or the potential 6-game winning streak we might be looking at next week that I may or may not have already jinxed?
No, I'm hoping that we see some more rubber chickens. By the next time we talk, that we got more chicken talk. So, and look, and we failed to mention it, but this is a team famously that has a chicken dance song.
Oh,
and it's weaved into its history too. So there's a lot of chicken stuff to explore here with this New York Islanders team and their new friend, the Elvis Rubber Chicken. So, here's hoping that there's some rubber chickens on the ice by the time we talk next time.
That
next
would be
week.
fantastic, and it's up to you all to get that done. But please don't scare Brent Sutter. He's gone through enough. So if you're gonna do it, just maybe do it against the Flyers or something. I don't know, but yeah. But no, I'm excited for it. We're gonna have a lot of stuff to talk about next week. We'll be back on Sunday, and the episode will come out on Monday, obviously. And I'm looking forward to the Ring of Honor game as well. It should be a lot of fun. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you again very soon. Take care. Bye bye.